So I'm working on another mobile app, trying to cook this one up for a client that wants to release it soon. We started working on it a few years ago, and now the client's finally in a position where they're ready to push this forward and get this out to their customers. It's basically a barber, hairstylist booking app where you can go find barbers, hairstylists near you and book them, communicate with them, chat with them, book appointments, rate the appointments, search for new barbers, basically like some barber apps that you've seen out there probably before if you've ever used one of those. And I have it loaded up here in the simulator where I've been messing around with it lately. I do plan to do some updates to the UI. It's been a couple years since I worked on the UI, but how it works is that this home explorer screen has a map that zooms into your location, and you can see the different vendors and click on them and go to their page and see what they're about. You can book a appointment with them, pick a product that they have, book an appointment on a certain day. I'm not gonna do it, but you can do that. You can message the vendor, I have a conversation with them, and then then there's a second page where it highlights a certain vendor. You can also save a vendor to your favorites that'll show up here, and then you have notifications that you get from the vendors when you have appointments and if they're ready for you and blah blah blah. Conversations that you've had are listed here, and then the final page is just where you can go edit your account, the details on it. You can check out your list of appointments here, rate your appointments. You can give a rating to what you want to rate it, 1 through 5. And so I mean, it looks pretty good. It's pretty minimalistic, that's what I was going for. I will probably do a couple tweaks after a few years, but that's basically the app right now. It's just booking, simply booking and rating appointments. Gonna probably build a couple features in the version 2, but right now this is what it's gonna be. But the question, I guess one of the things I want to talk about is how I actually put this app together. So how I coded it was using Xamarin, which is a cross-platform framework. Show that on the screen here. This is Xamarin. What you see on the side here is there's a Cut Corners project, Cut Corners Android, Cut Corners iOS. And so what Xamarin does is split the project into 3 parts where you can have your shared code in this file. So most of my code is in this folder. Most of my code is in this folder. All the logic for the pages, the API calls, the rendering, the widgets, the button clicks, everything is in here. Then when there's specific stuff I want to render on iOS or specific stuff I want to render on Android, I got these special projects for each of those, in which I can do like overrides. Like if I want to render a certain control one way on iOS but render it differently on Android, I can do specifics in these side projects. So it's pretty cool how it does it. It's a little bit different in React Native where everything is kind of like the same. You just have one project and everything is the same. This Xamarin more or less has 3 projects where they split it out. You kind of do overrides in the extra projects. I love Xamarin just because I like C# a lot, and that's the language that it uses. I don't know if Xamarin's still around actually. I worked on this a couple years ago. I think they've moved to some new type of framework now instead of Xamarin, but I could be mistaken on that. But anyway, I'm gonna move on. Here I also have an API project. So what this is I also built a API in PHP. So API endpoints as PHP pages where I can send requests from the app to get data for the app. So let's say I want to get the appointment list. I'm able to authenticate the user, make a database request to the database to get the data and return it back to the app. And so a lot of stuff's in here. The login is in here, like the request to the system to log the user in, the request to the system to register a new user, request to set up appointments, all of it. This is kind of the intermediate between the database and the app. So it takes requests and does some logic around them in order to store data in the database or to pull data from the database and send it to the app so I can show it to users. So this is what's called like a web service or a web API. I decided to use PHP. This was a while ago. But I still would use PHP. Like, nothing's wrong with using PHP for these API endpoints. You can secure it. You have to be careful about, you know, how you write the code, because it is very freeform, similar to JavaScript. You can make mistakes, but that's with any language. So yeah, it works pretty well for that layer. And then I think the next layer I probably want to talk about is the actual database. So yeah, this is my cut corners database. I'm not going to show every database, but these are the database tables. I got tables for favorites and messages and notifications and the users and the vendors and all the appointments, the documents, the events, everything that a vendor or a barber could store on their account, their hours, their images. So I have a table for everything. And like I said, the API is kind of the middleman, which helps handle requests and put them in the database. Or if there's a request for data out of the database, it'll handle it and pull it out of the database based on what the app is asking for, the user is asking for. So this is the database layer. So my database layer is MySQL, and I'm using PHP MyAdmin right now as a visualizer into the database. So like I said, I started with Xamarin on the app. So far I've talked about the PHP web API, and that interfaces with MySQL database. Where do I have all this hosted at? I'm not gonna log into it, but I'm using Google Cloud Platform, and I have a virtual machine VM that I have running on Google Cloud Platform. It's Windows. I have the database hosted there. The app's not that big yet, so I have everything hosted there: database, web API, and the website hosted there. Or that's where it's hosted in totality, is on Google Cloud Platform. So that's kind of the last piece of the architecture. The one last thing I'll show is the Cut Corners website, which is just a plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript website that just kind of advertises the app. It's pretty simple. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions. I can go deeper in future videos about each detail of each piece, but I just want to give an overview of kind of the architecture of the app and what it takes to have it running as it is, to store data, to pull data, to isolate the concerns between the different pieces of the architecture. Still got a lot of work to do on this. Definitely want to make some improvements in a bunch of areas. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, any feedback, anything. Appreciate you guys watching.